Good evening. Welcome to the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk show. I am one of your hosts, MacKenzie Wilson. Alongside me in the top right corner, you've got the famous Chris from Pinocchio. Driving Calgary along beside me is Bill Biko, our resident guest landlord on our show. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing tonight?
Fabulous.
Doing wonderful.
Perfect. Awesome. We're in a new month. We're in November now, man. Where's the time going? Even though we're kind of on quarantine and locked down these days, the time still seems to fly by. So some updates or quick announcements I'll get out with you guys right now. We've got the shows figured out for the rest of the month. I'm getting a little more proactive here and a little bit better at providing some content so that I can actually talk about it. We have the last show of this month in November. We have Diana Irving coming on. She is a phenomenal bookkeeper. She's been on one of our other segments as well, talking about the pros and cons of using a bookkeeper and the nuances that you need to check out if you're looking to hire a bookkeeper. You can check it out on our YouTube feed at findgreattenants.com. She's going to come on at the end of the month. We're going to talk tax preparation, and she's going to talk about the latest changes to the taxes for this upcoming tax season. So a really timely conversation as we get to the end of this year. If you guys are on top of you doing your taxes, you'll be in a position to make some informed decisions to best position yourself and set yourself up for an effective, what would be the right word? Savings, an effective setup, an effective approach on managing your taxes going into 2021. We also have a guest landlord, a professional landlord coming out of Edmonton, Alberta, Samuel Lai. He has been around the REIN investment community for some time. We're going to have a deep dive conversation on my favorite topic about landlording, tenant screening. He used to do it as a business. I think he's screened over a few short years, 250 tenants. He has his own investments. He has his own rentals, plus he's a big real estate investor. It'll be a great conversation. I watched one of his other presentations, and I loved it. So there's lots of pro tips coming there, all about tenant screening. And that's actually a really good segue into a thing I've been working on. I announced it last week. I'm honestly still working on it because I want to be really, really good for you guys. I've got a tenant screening course coming out. I will be launching that and getting that ready. It's probably going to go live here about the middle of the end of November. If you guys are interested and want to sign up for the course, I'll have all the information coming out very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. And then the last thing is next Wednesday is a very important date. It's Remembrance Day, November 11th. So out of respect, we won't be having a show next week. So please keep that in mind and take some time and remember those that have given the ultimate sacrifice to give us where we're at right now with our quality of life.
Nice.
Yeah, mouthful. So gentlemen, we were kind of talking in the background today. I've alluded to what we want to talk about. Two things. We're going to talk about documentation. Why is it so important? We'll talk about different nuances, little strategies. I know, Bill, you've got a really good setup going through the eviction process, how you approach that documentation, as well as layering your communication and just really document everything, and how that will put you in a really strong position, whether you have to go down the eviction route or just in general, it's important. We'll also talk about a tenant welcome package. I'm looking to improve this side of my business, so I've been looking at some new strategies to implement there. So we're going to have a really kind of an insightful conversation there and talk about what you can give to your tenant when you first onboard them or move them into your property to make it better. All right. Other than that, we'll be taking some live
important stuff.
Some important stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are looking great with those shiny lights going. I thought we should bring that up right away.
Definitely. I have to thank a landlord, a gentleman named Bill Biko told me to get a mic because I sound like a tin box. And, 2 weeks later, here I am with this shiny gold 24 karat mic I've been told about. And then Chris, about 7 days later, has got that silver one. Chris, it needs to be like 2 inches from your mouth. You got to sound, you need that deep radio voice. And it's like, it's too far away.
Hey, Matt, can you hear me?
No.
Let's move on.
No.
I'm just not as cool as you. We're killing time here till some people join us. That's what we're trying to do. We got six viewers here, so
yeah, they're coming in hot here. So, I don't know, Bill. Is there anything on your mind too? Like, what are you up to these days? One last question, icebreaker, then we'll get right into the thick of it.
Just flogging away. We've talked about some of this stuff. Trying to put some more information together for people and doing a similar route that you are. So that's a little ways away, but moving forward.
Very cool. And you know what? That's a good segue. I want to give a quick shout out to my friend up in Edmonton, Wayne Hiller and Gabby Hiller. They've got the Real Estate Dad podcast. And lo and behold, our resident sidekick, Bill Biko, you made an appearance on that show last week, didn't you?
I made the big time. I actually was allowed to go on the podcast. So that was kind of exciting. Very
cool. And I'm going to throw a link up for you guys right now. It was a really great conversation, folks. I highly recommend checking out because I really enjoyed it. And I realized you're probably not going to write that down. So I'll paste in the comments of the show after as well. But there is the link to the show right there.
What's that second 5?
Yeah, and 3-8. So Wayne interviewed Bill for a little over an hour, and I listened to the whole thing. And Bill, my biggest takeaway from that conversation you did was, we get into this. Those of us that invest in real estate as a business, all of us on this conversation right now, we get into this, wanting to do more, get into buying house number 5 and getting number 10, then 15 and 20, and it's not a race, but it is an addicting thing when you get the systems figured out. And you want to do more and more and more. But the reason why we do this is to give us a means to the end, which is for me buying my time back so I can be with my family, be with my 2 boys and my wife, and spend those moments. And you did a really good conversation about kind of, how you pivoted and stayed focused. Because as you said, we all can get focused working down this one path, but we forget why we're doing it. And it's spending those precious moments, because especially with kids growing up and having a family, you only get those certain milestones once. And then once they move beyond 5 and 6, and then in the next stage and the next stage, they might not want to do those certain things in life. And maybe mom and dad won't become as cool as they used to be when they were 5. Yeah, so you made a really good point to kind of stay
fast, right?
Yeah.
And, if you don't take advantage of what you got and what you've created, or even have a plan to get there, you miss out. So.
Yeah. So, you talked about planning time in the future to make, book off time in your calendar to spend time for your son's hockey game, or taking the kids out to the lake or to the beach to go swimming. And I think even one more thing I've done along those lines is I write down why I'm doing this. Like, why am I investing in real estate? Why am I managing my properties? And all these things is I want to be able to take my kids to their sporting events, to go to the school events, to pick them up from school. And I write those things down, and I have it written in front of me. And it just triggers my brain more to be like, okay, today I can either go and work on this thing for 2 hours, or I should put a half an hour over here to go play Lego with my oldest son, Bowen. Okay, I'm going to make sure I play Lego today. And it's just more top of mind. But anyways, it's a really powerful conversation on Wayne Hiller's podcast. It's a Alberta-based real estate investing podcast. Check it out. And hey, we got our first hello from Surrey, BC. That's pretty cool. Chris, do you know who's tuning in from Surrey?
It's coming up on my screen here. I'm sorry if I butcher your name, but it's Chick Apula Burgoyes. I'm sorry, man. Or lady. I'm sorry. I don't understand your.
I put you on the spot. That's okay.
You certainly did, but all the way from Surrey. I know we had a few people sign up from British Columbia. We've had some sign up from Saskatchewan. I've even had some sign up from Ontario. Basically, what they're looking for, and we qualify that, is that not all our laws are the same across the board, but the application of how to be a landlord generally is the same across the board. But you're going to have to follow some of your laws and guidelines that are in place. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot of strategies, a lot of nuances. We're in the trenches doing this business. The pro tips we learn along the way to save time, to reduce that risk, all these things we talk about, a lot of them actually have application across the board. Whether, heck, Bill, I know you've got worldwide watchers on both your evictions and your Educated Landlord website. And these best practices they go across all the jurisdictions. Now, you got to make sure if you're asking maybe certain questions in your tenant screen that they actually apply, and you're allowed to ask them where you live, because from the US to Australia to Canada to Alberta to California and Sydney and on, those may not be allowed in every location. So you got to be careful how you ask the questions. But
and just to go back to what we were just talking about there, setting these plans to do things up. You know, there's reasons that we get into our real estate and what we're doing it for. That's also a good reminder when we're having horrible times, which you're going through an eviction.
Oh
You've
my God.
got water damage in your property, which we're going to touch on later tonight. When you have these hiccups in your adventures of real estate investing, knowing why you're doing it makes it a little more palatable versus just getting frustrated and quitting. So,
Bill, man, that is so true. Even to this day, I was up at 7. I've reduced a few doors. I'm back down around 5 right now. Well, soon to be 5. I'm selling a couple right now. But yeah, even with how I focus myself to have these conversations with smart people like yourself, like Chris, we bring other landlords on the show, and I want to learn the best things. And I have all these great tips I've picked up and nuances and stuff. But there's even days I'm like, I want nothing to do with this right now. You get up against the wall, and it's such a frustrating time. You want to quit and be like, I don't want to deal with this tenant problem. It's just, I want to be somewhere else right now. And if you get the refocus and you know why you're doing it, and it's a little bit of short-term pain for a lot of long-term gain, it helps you refocus, and it gives you that strength, that motivation to get over the humps that come along with being a landlord.
I want to throw something out there. You know, I have a lot of people saying, you know what, I've had enough. I just want out of this. This is frustrating for me, much like what you're saying, Mac, and then people feeling, you know, sometimes they're having to top up some of the payments out of their personal pocket. You know, sit back, reevaluate what you're doing there financially, get a bookkeeper. Diana Irving is part of our group here. You know, sit down and talk to her. Maybe there's some refinancing you can do to bring your payments down. Having someone else pay your way and create and grow an asset for you is all about being a business. And a landlording business is not, I got a house and you're handing someone a key, because there's a lot more to it than that. And if you're not prepared to go through the storms, you know, to see the flowers, I guess, sorry about all the analogies, but to see the growth later, you gotta really dig in with some of this, or you got to wash your hands of it and go find something else to do.
Oh, and yeah, if you go in with no knowledge and you just kind of by the seat of your pants, you know, expect to go for a roller coaster ride of emotions. You're going to be taken out there. You're going to be stressful, and there's a lot better ways to do it. I mean, I think that's why this group came into effect and why we're here today, because these conversations need to be had. So
I love the one comment I've come across in time, just talking in generally to people, says, wow, now I got to claim all this income. I got to pay tax on this. I got all this extra tax. I go, oh, poor you. You know, I had a friend tell me one time, if you're paying taxes, you know what that means?
you're making money.
You're making money. That's right.
Yeah.
And so if you're making money, but here's the other great side of that money that you're making, the taxes that you have to pay, well, that's why you're making money. They're paying your taxes for you. And in the end, when you go to sell that investment and you put $200,000 or $300,000 in your pocket, you know what? You probably will have a big smile on your face later.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna play off of that headache factor and some of this learning curve. One of the things that I talk to a lot of landlords about the eviction process is, once they've evicted the tenant, a lot of them just want to quit and give up because they've gone through this major headache. But they've just learned one of the hardest lessons. They're going to be so much better at screening that next tenant so they don't have to go through that headache. They're going to be so much more thorough with checking in on the tenant. They're going to be taking action so much quicker. So the first one's the worst one, but it's just so much easier after that point. So
yeah, talk about the motivation. Plus they have that like spot on industry, like, you know, the process of eviction because you've gone through it now. You got the knowledge. So I mean, yeah, you know, hopefully you don't have to go through that again. You know, what's the old saying? You know, plan for the worst, hope for the best. Set yourself up to reduce these risks so you don't go down that path. But if in doubt, when you do go down, you've got the right people to reach out to guide you along the process. If you've not done it, as I'm riffing here a bit on what you're saying, Bill, or you've been down the process, you are now more. I mean, knowledge is everything. Knowledge is power. And it's no different in this business of being a landlord and investing in real estate. It's what makes and breaks and makes what this business doable. So that's what we're here. That's what we're all about, sharing some knowledge tonight.
Just want to take a moment to recognize our furthest most viewer who comes on religiously every night. Shelley Rogers, all the way from Australia. Shelley has a property in down around Calgary, and she's had some great successes with some of our support services that are tied into our group, and she's going through a little bit of a headache, I think, with a former renter. So hi, Shelley. Welcome aboard again, and happy to have you here. Australia. Wow.
That's super cool. I don't even know what time it is there right now. It's probably warm.
Beach.
Isn't it tomorrow? Isn't it tomorrow?
They're in the future. I love it. Okay.
Hey, so who won the U.S. election, Shelley? Can you tell already?
Yeah. Well,
we don't care tonight.
We'll leave that off the record. We can have a conversation. I want to do some research, and I want to see how that will affect us investing in real estate in Alberta. That will be a future topic. So, but let's see how that election plays out. Well, let's get into the first topic. Let's talk about this documentation. Chris, you've been through evictions. I know, Bill, you've been through evictions. There's lots of different ways to do documentation out there. And I think our two topics of documentation and tenant welcome package actually complement each other really well. So I don't know, I'm going to throw an open forum mic. Bill, tell me what you've learned about documentation from you first started to where you are now, and what's your biggest lesson learned with it?
So specifically talking about evictions and the process of being in front of a hearing officer or a judge presenting your evidence, you've got to be able to prove all the stuff you're doing. When you're talking to any kind of court setting, the person behind the bench basically has to follow the rules. And they have no idea whether the landlord's a bad person or the tenant's a bad person or there's just a misunderstanding. They just have to follow the rules. So the more evidence you have supporting your position, showing everything you've done, all the actions you've taken to work with the tenant, the better you look and the more supportive they will be of you. So in order to get to that point, what I would typically do is when I'm having an issue with a tenant, say we have a verbal discussion, you follow that up with a letter so that you get to the tenant the next day. And ideally it's a written letter that you leave at the property, but it can also be an email, which is becoming much more acceptable. And that's stage one of your documentation. It's just recapping what you talked about. This is what we said. This is what you said. This is what's going to happen. This is the timeline that's going to happen. Is that right? Is there any questions? And then I follow that up with another email or a text to them or both going, send it off to you, dropped it off to you. Did you have any questions? Did you see that section 5 that we talked about? I just want to make sure I got that right. Just laying that response bait back so that I get some kind of response back from them. Now I've got not just the original document that I dropped off to him as a piece of evidence, which I have a copy of. Now I've got the text I sent asking for confirmation. And now I typically get a response, a text or email back saying, yeah, I saw it. Everything looks fine, or I had questions about this. So now I can verify that they saw it all. And I just tend to stack all my evidence like that every time I possibly can to verify that they saw the information, they received the information. If you're posting eviction notices, it involves taking photos of the eviction notice on the property and post it up there. And just stack all of your information.
So if I want to recap what you're saying, Bill, and I want to, you're not leaving it to chance by just having a verbal conversation or a single text or a single email. You're taking a single message. Hey, Mr. Tent, we talked about situation ABC. I expect this is the solution we're looking for. Thank you for listening. There's an email. And then you had that phone, then you had a conversation as well. And then you have a text talking about that email or the conversation you had that day. Hey, just to confirm, did you get this? Does this all make sense? Do you have any questions? You want to have them respond both on text, on email, because then you've got double the confirmation on 2 different mediums of communication that the tenant has listened. And on top of that, Bill, you're saying maybe I have 3 separate emails about that same subject, remind them 2 days away, 4 days out, 6 days out.
Yeah, you just want to have a paper trail of all the issues, or even non-issues. I mean, this is something referred to as a tenant journal. I talk about some of the stuff I write about. Have a journal or someplace that you write everything going on with the property and with the tenant, and just keep track of it. And it can be minor stuff, but it's not uncommon for a disgruntled tenant to say, we complained about this back in March and you never did anything. It's like, well, okay, look at my notes here. Yeah, you complained about it in March, and then 2 days later, we were over there addressing the issue. So it's not like we didn't do it, but here's my notes show that we took care of it. And that's keeping a little journal of all these actions and reactions on your property. It makes a huge difference long term. And here we go back to what you said before. You prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
So true.
Majority of tenants will not be an issue. And the majority of the time, I hate to say it, you're going to waste time doing a lot of these little exercises.
But one time you don't. Yeah. Sorry.
One time that you need it, you're just so grateful. And you're going, wow, that one little extra bit of work I did just saved me $5,000 or $10,000 or $39,000. You're just not sure what can do for it. And it's way better to do it right and not need it than to do it wrong and really need it at the worst possible time.
Definitely. I can riff on what Bill's going to say, but I want to give Chris a chance because you've been politely quiet. Chris, with your law enforcement background, and I know you've worked closely with Rob Bowe out of Central Alberta, who's done countless evictions, and you've done a few yourself. What's your take on this documentation? What kind of important pro tips you can kind of throw out there to make those, if you have to go down the road of eviction, go more smoothly?
Well, just like Bill's saying, documentation is huge because what you have is you have a paper trail and you have a chronological order of what's been going on at your property. So I'll put this out to the group right now. How many of you go down to Staples, buy a $1 folder and pick a nice color, red, blue, green, yellow, whatever you want, and create a file on your tenant, wherein that you'll have the lease agreement, you'll have the check-in, check-out, you have maybe you're paying the utilities, so are all your statements, everything is in that file. So when everything starts to go sideways, you can pick that file up because you've got everything. I forget what those little binder things, but you fold them over and they hold all your papers in place, or staple it inside, but you have everything there. That's key. So when you open it up, you can find out everything about the tenants. You have one file, one tenant for the time period that you have them. Maybe you have to go back for taxes. You have tax issues, you're getting audited. Everything will be there. So when it comes to the documentation now, you want to evict somebody, so you can go in your file, because what do you have to send in? What's minimum? You have to send a copy of your lease in. You have to send a copy of any notices in. You have to send a copy of the payment schedule that you've had with them. Everything is at your fingertips. So you referenced my previous career. Documentation is important because when they have to read a file a month down the road or a year down the road after you put things together, this doesn't matter whether it's accounting, whether it's some of you are managers. You keep files on employees because you're either educating them and advancing them, or they need correction in the job performance. Everything has to be documented so that when you're questioned on something, you know exactly where you're at, because you're going to flip back, just like Bill said. Oh, yeah, you wrote us here and we talked to you 2 days later and we came over and we addressed it. And so where's the argument there? Quick example is in our community here, and I think a lot of others have gone this way, I can't get the water bill into the tenant's name any longer because they created a bylaw. I have to maintain that. So what I do is I budget in, and I allow in my budgeting of it is $100 for the water bill plus the other stuff. If they go over that, they have to top it up. So right now, the tenant, the last 3 months, she's used exactly the same amount of water. And what that's done is create she owes me $57.81 each month. So she missed 1 month, sent this last month on this payment, sent for last month. And now I sent her for the October and it's the same, but she's not realizing that there's actually 3. So my documentation, I'm going to be able to do her a quick ledger up and I go, here's what I've got from you. Here's what you owe. And then she's finally going to go, oh, sorry, I owe you another $57. So that's why it's critical when you get in these debates with tenants.
I'm going to take 2 takeaways from your guys' conversation so far. So, Chris, I love what you're doing. You've got a central location for all your pertinent information. And Billy talked about a tenant journal. So very similar strategies, centralizing all conversations and all relevant information for that tenancy and that rental all in one place. Now, I get rashes when I touch paper. I like to scan things and I use Google Drive. I might be a bit of a techie. Chris, you call me a propeller head, I think's the word.
That's
So,
privately, I tease you. I didn't say that publicly.
no, all good. I'm out in the open. We're an honest group sharing best tips and stuff. So I absolutely hate paperwork, and yet here I am, a landlord in the rental business where everything runs on paperwork. I scan everything to Google Drive. I have a very similar file system. I've got a tenant folder, and I go one thing beyond. So Bill said, I do texts, I do emails, I do in-person conversations. If I have to post evictions, they go on the property, following those right rules. But how many people here back up text messages? That's probably one of the most overlooked things that considering most of the conversations, like even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, sorry, when I started in 2016, I did everything over email, 99% of it. And then it just became more commonplace that you get a text message, and then you just naturally start having the conversation on the text message. I say most of my documentation probably actually lives, it's 50-50, maybe sometimes a little bit more towards text messages, but you need to make sure you back up those text messages, right? So if you're on an iPhone, there's iCloud, you can pay for that. There's software out there. There's one called iAmazing. I've used it in the past when I was on my iPhone. There's other ones that you got to download those texts. You know what? If you're good at not breaking your phone, you probably get away every couple months or something like that. But if you're someone who's in danger of breaking things and you go through phones like they're expired milk, then you probably need to back them up a lot more often. So just something to highlight. So I back up in my folder. I've got all my leases, my pets agreements, my utilities agreement, notice of tenant, all my documentation. I use my credit checks. So I use single key or neighborly. They're all layered in there. And those things are so critical. Plus, you have this wealth of information should something go sideways and they might do a midnight move. Well, now you've got a paper trail to start off of, and you've got yourself set up for success. One more riff here, and I'll lay it on. The points that you guys talked about doesn't only apply to landlords and tenants. It also applies to property owners and property management companies. You got to have the same expectation and documentation trail with your property management company. So if you're addressing these things, you want to get it documented, because it goes back to, well, I told you 3 weeks ago, I told you back in March about fixing this, and I haven't seen anything. The proof is no difference, man. I mean, written documentation. This goes in, like, obviously in the business world too, is paramount. It gets rid of hearsay, because hearsay doesn't get you anywhere.
Just one quick question came up from
Facebook user.
Yeah, I have to go get the name. Devinder. What it shows on our page, but it doesn't show here on this. But anyway, how long do you keep the documents on tenants? Personally, I don't know if there's actually, I do not know if there's actually a set amount of time. You guys can correct that, but I will keep it 7 years because of taxes. And you also want to be able to show if you're going to apply for things at banks and you want to show history and what kind of business you're running, you want to keep it a minimum of 7 years. Because you don't want it to come back and bite you. So
totally, I would say the delimiting factor is CRA. That's 7 years, and then I want to make sure I get this correctly. Rob Bowe says, and Chris, correct me in my law and legal terminology, because I know I'm probably going to butcher and not use the right word, but there's a statute and how far you can go after a tenant for money, or vice versa. They can go after you for a claim. Is it 5 years?
2 years.
2 years. Okay, quite a bit less. So let's just say, you take the longest case scenario, which is a CRA, keep it for 7 years, and you're probably well protected that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool question. We did get another one. Do you want, what, let's take these as we go. So I was saving this, but let's get it up, because these folks are watching right now. So Chris, I don't know if you can help me with the name.
Which one?
Facebook user.
Counter potential. Okay.
We're just grinding them right now. I've encountered potential tenants, but whenever I say part of our process is to do credit check, they usually don't get back to me. Is that unusual in Calgary?
That's Cheech. I'm going to call you. I like Cheech, and I think I'm saying I'm going to go with Cheech. That's
all right, Cheech. Thank you for your question. So, I'll take a stab at this, and I'll throw it back to you two gentlemen. No. The short answer is no. If they're not getting back to you, they could be only tire kicking. This relates back to having a very systematic screening process. So by the time you get to the point of talking about and asking for a credit check, they're already very qualified. I do credit checks for all my properties. I'm all in Calgary, all my doors, and I don't have issues with the credit checks. Actually, this year was the first year I actually charged. I not charged. I made the tenant pay for their own credit checks, so I outsourced that cost. So we can dive into that. And Cheech, we got a show coming up here at the end of the month with another landlord out of Edmonton who's very much like me, who's very big on tenant screening. Super powerful conversation, lots of pro tips. I recommend tuning in for that. And that's actually the subject of my course that I'm coming out here later this month as well. So
I think Cheech joined just recently, so welcome aboard. And if you don't know this, Cheech, and I'll say this for the other people watching, is we have partnerships formed with Neighborly and with Single Key. And help me with some more, Mac, of our partners, please.
You put me on the spot here. So we've got a property management company that sponsors our group here called, we got to give them a shout out. Thank you. Brett Turner over at Redline Real Estate and Greenleaf Property Management. They do a segment once a month on our group as well, talking about, we talk about anything and everything, more on the property management side. So it's good questions if you got questions relating to, what's your responsibility as an owner and working with a property management company. Oh man, I know we're missing something right now.
We have Diane Irving, our accountant. We have our 4 legal guys, agents that go in and help you with your evictions. Biggest thing is put the questions out onto the page. If you're struggling with how to deal with something, we'll get you hooked up with our sponsors right away. And Cheech, what I'm trying to tell you here is go to our links or ask us for them with Neighborly or with Single Key. What happens there is, if you haven't seen the other shows, is your tenant, you can send them a link. They can fill it out. The information goes right to Single Key and Neighborly, and they send you a detailed report back. You are also, because you are a member of this page, your deal today is you get a discount for doing it because you're a member of this page. And even
Landlord Credit Bureau. That's another one. That's one so key. I love that.
You need a cheat sheet.
I do.
Well, we just got so many people coming on board with us. It's amazing. So
we're almost going to crack 2,000 here. I think we're only 40 people away, members from being from 2,000 people across Alberta. That's cool.
And the Landlord Credit Bureau is another one, Cheech. When you become a member of that, you actually don't even have to be a full-blown member. You can report delinquent situations to them. They'll help you. They'll walk you through that. But if you do join with them, there's a whole different process. And I know one of our big members of the page who has a couple hundred doors, he joined full-blown with the Landlord Credit Bureau. And he's talked to me openly about it over all the years with a six-figure delinquency. He's filing everything with the credit bureau.
Yeah, he joined because of our show. So we had the CEO, Zach, and I can't remember his last name. I can't pronounce Clem. Starts with a K. Anyways, CEO of Landlord Credit Bureau. He's out. He started out. All of his doors are out in Ontario. I think he's got 200 to 500 doors. He's up in that range, and it's such a powerful tool. It's part of my screening process. I'll get the details of how that works. I can have that as another conversation. So good, and I cannot say enough of how important it is, and it reduces so much risk out there when you put some of these systems in place. So yeah, totally cool. Oh, we got a shout out for Brett Turner. Yeah, awesome, cool. Loving this. Okay, so we're talking about documentation. So I wanted to highlight 2 things. So Bill, I'm going to recap. Your first point is you're layering documentation on conversations. You have a conversation in person, you follow up with a text and an email, and then you might follow up 2 or 3 days later to make sure that they've understood it. You want to see replies, because then you can document and take all this to the judge and say, hey, look, arbitrator, I talked to Mr. Tenant here 4 times. He responded 3 of the 4 times. So I know he knows the message. I don't know why he's saying he never got the message today. That doesn't make sense, or however you want to word that. But that gives you that power. The next thing, if you have to go down the eviction route, is how we structure the documentation. And Bill, I know you're really good at this. It's kind of set up a timeline and a table of contents. Do you want to kind of dive in the details and tell us how you do it?
One of the things I always create with my applications is a timeline, basically a whole list of when things happened and what happened and how we got to where we are. And then I cross-reference it with all the evidence I have. So it's a little bit different now since it's all online, but when you used to do the paper applications, my timeline would include, this happened at this point. See evidence C for this information, and then this proceeded along, and then this issue occurred. See evidence G, and just create this whole extra paper trail.
Okay.
When you're dealing with these hearing officers who are hearing case after case after case all day, a lot of landlords are not submitting very much evidence. And
so Bill, you're saying if I submit my lease, my statement of accounts, because I took some money from damage deposit and they're complaining about it, and a couple of receipts, that's not enough?
Not quite enough. My typical application is anywhere between 80 and 100 pages, sometimes more.
Wow.
And I include everything. So text strings with additional notes on there, photographs where necessary, everything I can do to create a complete picture. And I understand it kind of scares some of the hearing officers when they see this. But when I've got that timeline, which just kind of summarizes a lot of the stuff that's going on and allows them to go look directly at the pieces, they can do a high-level observation, go through it in a couple minutes and go, oh, wow, he's got all the information, everything's right.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really necessarily have to go through the rest, and I've already painted a picture that I'm a professional landlord, I know what I'm doing, and I've taken all the necessary steps and tried to work with the tenant typically.
Yeah, I think that part's so key is Bill, you're taking 120 pages of detailed documentation why you made these claims against their damage deposit, but there's a one pager at a snapshot, and it's like a table of contents. First entry is the lease. Second entry is the photos. Third entry is conversations from March, then conversations from April, or these dates. And then you just got pages. So if we're doing it online now these days, maybe you could do Google Drive links for each of these sections. But you've got a one pager that shows chronologically, so from April 1st to April 15th to the 22nd, the 23rd, all these different entries of all the key components that builds your story, but you can see it quickly in a one pager.
Exactly. And it just makes it easier on everybody and gets the process done a little bit quicker.
And it shows you very professionally in a manner how organized, if you come into your hearing or if you're in the provincial court and your arbitrator or judge can look over it and within 5 minutes know everything about the case.
Yeah.
It just
versus looking at it and going, oh my God, there's 120 pages I have to read before I even get to start this.
And they don't know where to look. And then you're trying to explain to them, well, yeah, sir, go over to page 145 and then back down to 87.
Yeah.
So structuring that paperwork is just going to set the presence and tone. And it just, you're setting yourself up to win.
I guess the other important thing I should add in here is when you're going through the eviction, also make sure you ask for what you want. If you're evicting the tenant and you want them out right away because you're scared they're going to damage the property, they've shown hints of being very abusive towards you and the property.
Destructive.
In the application, make sure you have a summary and basically say, I need the tenant out as quickly as possible due to A, B, C, D, and here's the evidence pointing back to it as well. And just stacking more of that documentation. Too many landlords will go in there and they don't do that. The hearing officer gives them 30 days to get out of the property, and the landlord's freaked out because why didn't they kick them out right away? Well, you didn't ask. Don't leave it up to somebody else. Ask and influence and push towards what you want.
Right. Cool. Yeah. And one more riff on that, and then Chris, I'll let you hang back. I want to get this point out is you got to ask for something that's fair. You can't, and then this is like super important. Like, let's say you've got 15-year-old carpet and it's got an average lifespan of 20 years and it costs $800 to replace, and you're asking for $800. Well, no, you can't ask for $800 because the carpet's already 3/4 through its average life expectancy. You can only get that quarter of life. So it'd be $200 you can qualify for. So you got to have those things. You got to be within reasonable grounds on your deductions as well. And that can get you into trouble if you're out in left field.
Let's move to Yasna. Yeah, her comment regarding this garage fire.
Okay. Hey guys, regarding the garage fire, should I have my tenant sign a form agreeing to never do that again? If they were to disobey, it would be considered a breach of contract. They would be like an amendment to the contract in which no garage fires are permitted during the duration of the tenancy. So Chris, do we have a backstory here?
Yeah, I talked to her sidebar on this. Her and I actually have talked quite frequently since she's joined the group when she's had some difficulties. Basically, a tenant, what I could tell by her pictures and talking to her, the tenant had a little fire pit at the inside of the garage. The big garage door went up, and they had a little tiny fire pit going right underneath that garage door. What I told her was, if the picture is holding true, it wasn't outside, but I'm sure it was inside. The heat from that fire, people don't realize if you were to hold your hand up, you probably couldn't hold your hand up there. And there's inside those doors is styrofoam
insulation.
And it's going to just deteriorate from the heat. So I told her to be checking that door and feeling if that styrofoam got overheated and was wrecked. But basically, she didn't want this fire. Well, it's ridiculous what the person was doing. Quite honestly, there wasn't even a grate on the fire. So you're going to do
had a portable fire, like a wooden fire pit, maybe, or a propane one. They're burning it inside the garage or a few feet within the garage, and it burnt the garage down, or just wrecked the garage.
Oh, they just had a fire pit in the garage, for God's sake.
Oh, okay. There's no damage as of today.
This time.
Well, I haven't talked to her about it since, but I explained to her that because her big garage door was up and the fire was underneath it, potentially inside that where you drive through with your car, that garage door could be damaged because there's styrofoam in there.
So my take on it, and I think you guys will probably agree, is I don't want that. That to me is a big liability and a risk. And I think I remember this post now. She saw it, the tenants posted a picture on their Facebook, and she happened to be friends with them.
That's right. That's
okay. Right. Yeah. Oh, actually, she messaged me about this conversation. So this is Yasna, right?
Yasna,
yeah. So what we had a conversation about is I wouldn't want that. So I would do two things here. Definitely get the conversation right and reach out to them and just say, Mr. Tenant, I would third party the blame, so you can kind of keep the peace with your tenant and maintain that kind of positive relationship with your tenant. Say, due to my insurance, I noticed on Facebook you had this fire, and it's just something I'm at risk, and we have no coverage. It's not appropriate. It goes against my insurance, and which is a breach of my your lease. This cannot be happening going forward. Can you please respond and comply? They get them to agree in the email, and if you want to take it one step further, maybe you make a one-pager document, send over in DocuSign or HelloSign, so that's digital signing, and get them to sign off that they won't do that behavior.
Yes, I was going to check the property out, and she probably can get it all signed and agreed upon at that time. But Bill, what's your take on this?
You can't really do it as an amendment to the lease at this point, but you can have a separate form or even a separate piece of notice going back and forth saying, not acceptable. Here's why. It would be deemed breach of the lease due to the issues with the insurance. And it's probably a kindly time to point out that they should have their own renter's insurance and just verify that.
Yeah.
Well, this violates every fire code out there. So you know what? If you want to evict them, it's
an unsafe act. So it is in your lease in that sense. It's not directly written, don't have fire pits. But again, now next time when when your landlords are looking to build that professional lease that has all those clauses, you now have a rule that says no fireplaces in your garage. Unfortunately, you don't know every situation until you experience some of them. Or pay attention to this group, and you'll see other ones, and you can capture those experiences into your own lease.
Part of the challenge is a lot of tenants simply have no clue about how any of this stuff works.
Well, some don't have never owned homes before, so that those nuances of maintenance don't even. It's not
like Chris said. The fire's hot, and it goes up really high, and they don't get that. But sometimes you just have to handhold and explain things and walk tenants through things. I've had to explain how to use plungers to tenants, and I'm going, that's the easiest thing ever, but they've never had to use it. So, it's part of our walkthrough process.
Label water shutoffs. This is all great.
Water shutoffs. Here's a plunger. Do you know how to use a plunger?
Okay.
Use it.
I'm going to totally snowball this conversation. I'm going to do a segue here on you guys. So, Chris, I don't know if you wanted to go to another place, but I want to talk about a welcome package. So I think this is super important. I think this is a great way to separate yourself as a professional tenant or as a professional landlord and set yourself apart. And really what I'm getting at, so right now I kind of do this, but I don't have a binder. I write a lot of emails is what I do. I have a huge welcome email that gives, I have a specific email for each property to receive e-transfers, so that money gets auto deposited into my bank account only for that property. I explain to them my plumber's list. So should there be an emergency, I don't want to be called at 3 a.m. The first call is you're calling that plumber. What's that?
They have to call Chris, right?
That's right. I have Chris on the sidebar for that inside joke came down to Calgary from Panoka. He's passing through and helped me fix a toilet. So, anyways, whatever. I
love my little techie buddy.
Yeah, we're doing great here. So I have all this stuff well documented in emails, but my next step here is I want to fold into a really cool binder and hand over to the tenant as we do our move inspection, and they'd be like, it does two things. One, you look so professional doing it. Two, you set the expectations up front. So let's talk about some of the cool things you could be putting in this welcome package to streamline your business and reduce risk. Probably number one is a damage cost list. So if the tenant breaks lights, breaks fixtures, puts holes in walls, has to repaint a wall, common things, replace flooring, a wall, if it takes a minimum 1 hour, it's $100 charge plus paint, so $150. If you have to replace these things, it's this. So then the tenant realizes if they're being stupid, if I can use that word, I don't want to be too aggressive here, but if they're being stupid and they're damaging your property, they know directly that's going to cost me $350 if I do this silly thing. So then they think about it, and they're probably less likely to do it. What else? You know what, Bill, you raised a good point about the totally had a brain freeze here, but I got this when I did your training way back in the day. Is putting tags on water shutoff valves and walking the tenants through the locations. Again, people have never used a plunger before. They've also not used know how to shut off water in a house. So if the toilet's leaking, they have a break. Where's the water main? How to do all this stuff to minimize a bunch of possible damage by saving time and getting that stuff shut off right away.
Oh my God, I have to tell you, I had a tenant call me in panic that her tap in her sink broke and she's got her hands on top of it trying to stop the water from coming out.
And calling you.
And calling me at the same time. I live right down the street, so I didn't understand what was going on because she started panicking. I went up and I just reached under and turned the water off underneath the sink. Like, she goes, "That's all you had to do?"
Which is a nice segue. If you're buying a property and doing renovations on it, put shutoff valves on everything. Some older properties don't have shutoff valves on the toilets, and they don't have it on the bathroom taps, and they don't have it in the kitchen taps, and that can be a real lifesaver.
I should do that handy dandy landlord.
Welcome back.
Like I just showed you how to put a shutoff valve on.
Yes. Smart ass. Okay, so anyways, some things I include. Other things is mailbox location. So I've got one property where Canada posted the update. Now it's down the street, a block away on the curb. I have a Google Doc where I have a print or a Google map, of the exact location. And if you're walking out the front door, measured in meters, how to get there. So things like that. I have, so all my properties are keyless locks. They're all Slodge, deadbolts, and indoor locks. I give out no keys now. I explained to the tenants that they're responsible for replacing the batteries. I actually got a call last week on that. I didn't even have to go down the property. She got in herself because she got locked out. On the one door quit working. She walked around in the back, got herself back in. And then the inside door wasn't working, but my inside doors have these jumpers. So they run off a 9-volt battery. And you can actually press the battery against the door lock that's dead and jump it with a live battery to open it to get back inside if the lock itself dies. So I have all this kind of information in emails right now. So this is another thing I want to add to my welcome package. Set expectations when they should be texting me. I know I don't answer texts after 8 o'clock, or, you don't want to be called. It's about managing your time. And if you just give the right expectation to the tenant, they'll respect it, but they don't know. You're going to get that 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock text message at night saying, "Hey, I just did this," or "Hey, this is broken. Can you come take a look at it?" kind of thing. I know, Bill, you had something too you're kind of talking about before the show.
Yeah, one of the handy things that we do, or the things that tenants appreciate, is when we're there the weeks before, we've got to check the mail and clean up the mail all the time. And what you find are the pizza flyers and the restaurant flyers, and we put those into a nice little package so that when the tenant comes in, it's like, we know you're new to the area. Here's a bunch of the takeout menus so you can order in food if you need to. And it just
I like that touch. That's super cool.
We also include all the manuals for the appliances for the property in the package as well.
Yep.
So, most of them will never touch it, but some will actually want to change a setting on, be it a digital thermostat or something, and it's.
Or again, this might save you a phone call on the long weekend Friday. You're going out to the lake, and the tenant's like, I can't get the microwave to go on, and it's flashing these numbers. What does that mean? Or it's an error code in the laundry. What's that?
Yeah, and it just saves time and energy. And I mean, we have the whole. Typically, things have changed again. When we started out, people had phones with actual cords and places in the kitchen where they were. And we used to, one of the tactics we learned was we put a list on the kitchen cabinet closest to the phone, which had our number at the very bottom, but it had police, it had emergency, it had ambulance, it had our plumber's number, it had emergency furnace numbers and ATCO's numbers and all these numbers. Again, ours at the bottom because we wanted to be the last people they called. And just kind of walk them through it when they moved in. Here's the emergency numbers. Here's who you're going to call if this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. And if you can't get a hold of those guys, then eventually you call us. And again, it just saves some time.
Love it.
Mac, you want to do? We got about 8 minutes left there. Do you want to do bang through some questions off the page? I know I got one burning in my mind here that I want to cover off. So,
well, Chris, don't you do any documentation? What do you do to set expectations with your tenants? You got to take a stab at this.
You know what? Honestly, I'm small town. If they can't figure out where the pizza shop is, I question whether I should be having them. That's my input for you.
Straight to the point.
You guys got her covered. I'm okay with what you said.
Chris Noble, I love it. Okay, fair enough then. Yeah, I might do another segment on this because I'm building my ultimate tenant welcome package. So we'll touch base on that again. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, let's get through. We got a bunch of comments here. We got a positive thank you with another thank you. I include a charge guide in my welcome package. Cool. See, sweet. So
nice.
I'm not crazy.
I'm going to go with that one question off the page tonight. Three of us discussed this pre-show, and it was the roofing question. We have the one girl, she's a member of our page. She actually just became a member in the last day or so here, where she having roofers come in to do her, to fix her roof, and her tenant's mad because she didn't give 24 hours notice. The debate became on the page for a moment or two, whether you had to give 24 hours notice for being outside the property. My position on that, and I think it holds a lot of weight legally, is that's their home. You might own it, but that's their home. So to think that you can just waltz onto a property and because it's the outside of the property anytime you want, that's not correct. You have to give notice to be on there. If it's an emergency, your roof's got a hole in it because it got hit by lightning or just sprung a leak, which I've had that problem. That becomes extenuating circumstances, and then you got to get on. You got to get it fixed because there's going to be damage both to their property and to yours. Now, having a roofer come in, you are going to be looking at weather's always an issue for roofers, the poor guys, and when it's nice, they got to go hard and fast. But tell them, say, look, this is the week they're anticipated to come. Be prepared for it. They'll come in accordance to the weather and get the roof done, and it's got to be done.
Yeah.
So my position is, give them their notice. This is what's going to be happening over the next week or 2 weeks. If you're looking at it, you're going to see you're going to have a 6 out of 7 days of rain. Well, give them 2 weeks notice that over this time period it's going to happen. Do not
explain it's weather dependent.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's a priority for you to keep your property in good working order. So you know what, they're going to come. If your tenant is a shift worker and they're working all night, you're going to have to work with the contractor. Say, look, this is when the person is sleeping. They're on nights this particular week, so you're going to have to let them sleep, to schedule it in. But if they're a continuous night working, maybe you're going to have to ask them, if we know the day they're coming, can you go sleep somewhere else? And you know what? They need the new roof. So everybody's got to work together, and you've got to build relationships with your tenants. That's huge, and giving them that notice, it's a must. It's their home, your property, but it's their home. You got rules to follow. What's your guys' take on that?
I got 3 takeaways, but you go first, Bill.
It's kind of a common courtesy. Reading the post earlier, it just seems there was some confusion and miscommunication. The roofers probably should have been able to give a better idea of when they might be there, even if it was like a week-long window. The homeowner should have been able to pass that on to the tenant, and the tenant should have had an expectation that somebody's coming, they're just waiting for good weather. So where that kind of fell apart, we don't really know. And how good are the tenants? If the tenants are good tenants, you work with them and just to kind of explain and apologize for the inconvenience. If they're really good tenants, you give them a couple of $10, $25 Tim's cards, apologize and say, sorry, the priority is we've got to get it fixed. We just got to get through this, and sorry if there's an inconvenience. And you just make it work. So ultimately, you've got to protect your asset, but you got to walk that fine line.
Yeah, and reading that post, I think there was some riffs in there, so it probably added fuel to some fires. So,
okay, I'll do my quick take. So there's 3 things at play here. You're violating that tenant's right to a peaceful residence in a quiet home. That's part of what's in the RTA and on most leases, is they have a right to a peaceful enjoyment of the rental property. By having someone show up unexpectedly, banging on the roof or ripping out shingles, that kind of crosses that line. Now, I remember in the post they mentioned, the tenant was frustrated and wanted at least a 24-hour notice. You don't need a notice because you're not going inside the property because it's external. You need a notice when you have to go enter the property. That's that 24-hour notice to go in, unless you get permission unless you get permission to do it quicker directly from the tenant. Then you can go in, day of or a couple hours before. But think of it as if you're the tenant. If you're there and then someone just starts showing up banging on the roof with no notice, I mean, no, that doesn't really fly. If it makes you uncomfortable or frustrated, the tenant's probably feeling the same way. So I think in this case, like Bill alluded to, there's a little bit of miscommunication. Amend that fence and apologize and move on, and then be clear with both parties. Tenants, okay, here's what's going on forward. It's weather dependent. And talk to that contractor and say, hey, I've got a business here. You can't just show up and bang on my tenant's roof. They need to know when you're coming so they can make arrangement because this person works nights or whatever the reason might be. What was my third one? Oh, I think I covered all 3 there.
Yeah, you got her.
Okay, awesome. I'm just going to throw up a question here that I dug up on the page. This is from Chantel. So, hey, Chantel, hopefully you're still watching if you're catching us on the replay. So Chantel writes, and I repaste it, so that's why my face is there. But hi, any ideas on how to confirm a tenant is smoking in a non-smoking suite? I am getting some reports from my neighbors that there's smoke, but it should be a non-smoking suite. I've already spoken to the tenant, but he has denied it. So she's asking how can she go about and get proof here? So some people had some really good answers on the post, and I'm going to highlight them because I didn't even think of them. Someone said check the kitchen, the stover vents or the ventilation, like the fan, overhead fan, and the same fan in the bathroom. You can't really get the smoke smell out of these areas if they go and say light a bunch of scented candles in the house to kind of mask that smell. Other thing too is if they're doing it on a consistent basis, it's going to smell, and you'll just give them a 24-hour inspection notice and go and view your property. You'll know right away. And if you do discover they are in fact smoking, what Bill said at the beginning of the show, let's get that documentation or that communication documented very well across different mediums: email, in-person conversation, and text messages, and layer that documentation. On top of that, what I would do too is if because smoke and smell is something you can't take a picture of or record very well, other than you can recognize it and when you smell. So it's tough to document. You need to get third parties to come in there. So if it's a suite property, maybe have the tenants who are downstairs come upstairs, or vice versa. Maybe bring over a neighbor and say on your inspection, and if you got two different parties with you and they all say, yeah, it smells like smoke, get them to write an email and say, hey, I was with you, MacKenzie, on this inspection, and we went over your property, and I noticed it did smell really badly in the kitchen, at the whatever. So then again, if you're going down to that eviction and you got to prove they did smoke in the property, but there's no visible damage, well, you've got two emails from two different parties that aren't related to you. So make sure it's not a husband or a daughter or someone that's related to you saying, yes, they did smoke.
There you go.
I know, Bill, what's your take on smoking in suites? How do you deal with that?
Smoking is a slippery slope of proof. It's
challenging.
Tough. So you have to go in with that documentation as well and basically say, listen, we're getting complaints about the smoking. We know you're denying it, but in our inspections, there's been obvious smoke smell on the property. It can't continue. If there are more issues, we will move forward with an eviction. And now you've set that paper trail. You back it up with your text, email, and stuff. And if it happens again, now you've got the older evidence to fall back on. It's not, if you're going to a hearing, it's not suddenly this is the first time it's popped up. We knew nothing about this. We don't. Now you've got history. Even if they denied it, you've still got history.
And a thought here on how to word these emails when you're having with the tenants is saying, hey, I know we discussed it. I know you're aware that smoking is not allowed, and there's been a very obvious presence of smell on the property. What are your solutions not to smoke in the property in the future? And that they provide solutions, and you word the question that way, you're getting them to admit in the email back to you in writing saying, yeah, I know, I think if we do it this way or do it outside or whatever, that is what you need when you go to the eviction office. Like, hey, the person has this email. He told me he was smoking. He told me he wouldn't do it again. He's going to do it outside now, so he doesn't do any more damage. So I asked him, what do you think was a fair solution in this situation? Basically, what I'm getting at is you're playing a little bit of wordsmith in here to get them to admit that on paper that they are doing what they're being accused of. Okay. Do you got a question there, Chris, we want to hop over to?
I'm good. I was just reading through some here, and I just can't pick any out that are really quick. I just don't know how far over you want to go, so we don't lose everybody's attention. But
totally fair. Bill, do we got any kind of points that you saw on the page lately you want to tackle? One last question.
I think we've kind of sideways covered some of them when we were talking about some of the documentation earlier. There were some questions people had about documentation and applying for evictions. We've kind of gone over that. We've talked about a lot of different things again tonight, which is great. So,
yeah, no, it's really this conversation was packed through a lot of nuances and pro tips just to make that life easier as a landlord. So let's just read this through. The tenant who informed me of smoking complaint sent me a copy of the smoker tenant apologizing and admitting to smoke inside. Awesome. That's exactly what you want to get. Yeah. So here's another way to frame that conversation is, especially if it's a suite property, or this would be ideal if it's a suite property, is, this is a non-smoking. Can you please send an email to the downstairs tenant and CC me just saying this won't happen again and that you apologize for smoking in the unit. Again, that's another layer of layering the documentation and getting them admit to the breach lease. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Well,
go ahead, Mac.
I don't know. Chris, you wrap up the show.
No, you're the speaker. I'm going to give you my final thoughts while you guys think of yours. And mine is just talking about posting on the page. And when you're posting on our page, I want like everybody to put some thought into what you're about to say. When you start a sentence off with, I'm pretty sure, as far as I know, I wouldn't worry about it. It should be, or I think, you're losing your validation and your credibility as a poster. If you're pretty sure it's something, then quote the section. If it should be something, then quote the section that supports you. If you think it's something, then quote the section that supports you. And I'm sorry to harp on that, but we want everybody to provide sound, solid advice to the members of this page. And if you start off your reply to someone with those things, that tells me and others that you're not maybe,
you're providing an opinion over fact.
You're providing an opinion over fact. Look at you go with that. Thank you very much for filling that in for me. So, and I mean that in the kindest way I can say that is provide solid information to the page. There are people that respond on the page, which they already come with the street cred. Our legal guys, they know they're in it. So, they're not going to quote the section every time. But if you go back through, you'll see how solid they are in the information. And don't kid yourself for a second. When there's something I'm not sure of, I'll go to Bill here, or I'll go to Rob Bo, or I'll talk to Mac, and I'll say, this is what I'm taking out of this question. This is where I want to go with it. And Bill and I had a conversation tonight before I responded to one of the posts, and I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page, and I was headed down the right way, and we responded basically as a team. Although it was myself that my name was to it.
It was my opinion.
You're such an opinionated ass, Bill. No.
But, we by no means, like Chris and I, we bring people on like Bill, we bring other landlords, and we do not know everything. By no means, man. Like, that is probably one of the most exciting things about this community, this such an active, engaged group we have of landlords, is I see a situation come up, I'm like, man, I never thought of that. And someone will provide a solution. I'm like, that's a bulletproof point. That's awesome. Like, we're learning just as much as you guys are. We're just the facilitators. We're the catalyst to keeping these conversations going, so we can all learn more. But just to add to Chris's point, like, back it up with some evidence, link it out to the RTA, what section is quoted out. If you're talking about an eviction and this happened, talk about some of the documentation. We don't need you to post your exact eviction papers up there, but just we need that evidence behind the conversation. It builds that street cred really quickly for you, and it's going to provide that much more value back to the community for everybody else when we're all looking at these answers and be like, oh, that person knows what they're talking about because these are the reasons why.
Yeah.
So
cool. Well, boys, that's another show under our belt. So there we go.
How many shows are we at now? We're 22 or 23 now. That's a lot. It's impressive.
We really like to thank everybody for joining us, your questions, and hopefully one day. We did have almost a 50-member show one night, and that was fantastic. We will be bringing more guests on. Mac's always looking for somebody. I'm always looking for somebody. If you'd like to appear on our show, please write to us, and we'll send you a ticket. I'm just kidding.
Right.
I hear that on Dr. Phil all the time. No. If you'd like to be a member of the audience. But seriously, folks, go ahead, Mac.
I was just going to say, I have reached out to folks who've expressed interest, and if you do, message me on Facebook, send me an email. It's MacKenzie@findgreattenants.com right now. The email will be changing, but anyways, send us a note. I've got a couple others I got to reach out that have reached out. I know, Chad, you're out there. I know you're listening. I want to get you guys on the show. You can be a new landlord, experienced, somewhere in between. What's really critical is you're going to probably ask questions to us from your perspective and what you know, and that's going to drive a more engaging conversation and help people learn more. So you don't have to have all the information to be on the show. Actually, it's a good mix of experience will make this show really great.
And if you're feeling the anxiety of coming on the show, well, that's perfect, because we'll guide you through it. We would really love to have you on here. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I'm anxious every time I'm on here. So.
Right. Yeah, one like a top there, Bill. On that note, Bill, I want to thank you again. You've given us another hour of your evening and 9 minutes. So, do you got anything that's important to you want to share with the group tonight? A passion project, your charity you've been working on? What's going on in your world, Bill?
Nothing at the moment. Nothing to share. Nothing exciting. So just.
I heard your daughter, your eldest, just moved out, and now you're making a hot tub room in your house.
Well, that's what you suggested. It's actually turning into a little bit of a
cigar room, billiards room.
No, probably a studio room. So my wife's an artist, and cool. She's actually going to be creating some online classes. So we're going to be recording some classes in there, and I'll record a few more of my sessions as well for some of my stuff. So
awesome. Well, let's wrap up that note, guys. We're 10 minutes over. It's been another awesome night. Can Can you bring a landlord from BC or other
I
provinces?
jumped all over that. I just got to throw it out there. I know we're over, but you know what? What a great idea. Thanks for putting that up there. That's from Devinder. You know what? That would be a great show. You have a BC and Alberta, Saskatchewan, and even in Ontario, because we have some members down there. Wouldn't it be neat just to compare what one can do and what the other can't do? That's a great topic for a show. We'll work on that, and that would be
yeah,
great show.
So who's our vendors asked that?
Devinder. It's
Devinder.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw one back at you. Can you give us some topics that you want to hear from other landlords from other provinces? Are you thinking like, give us a focus point, and I'll dig in that. I'll dig through. I know landlords in almost every province now, except for some of the Maritimes, but all the bigger provinces. I will reach out and get some people on the show because very cool idea.
We should get somebody from Quebec because that is a shit show in itself down there.
Okay. And you'll learn how good we have it in Alberta when we start talking.
Absolutely.
About what we do. So actually, you know what? That would be a good compare and contrast. On that note, you guys are listening to the only show in Alberta dedicated to Alberta landlords. It's the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk show. Thank you for joining with us tonight, and we'll see you guys not next Wednesday because it's Remembrance Day, but the Wednesday after, which is going to be the 18th, I believe. So we'll see you guys then. Should be a great conversation. Stay tuned.
All right.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks, everybody.